busy bee. You make life sweeter for you and me. I'll plant the flowers, you bring the queen. We'll build a great big colony. Spring is sprung, we'll fly sky high. We're alive at the Hive.
Well, that was awesome, Alicia. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome Alicia. Alicia's our fourth member of Alive at the Hive. So we really appreciate the song and the fact that you're here today. And welcome to everybody out there. I am George. I'm president of the CCBA, and Alive at the Hive is will be on Mondays, every other Monday, the second and the fourth Mondays of the month. And our goal is really to show everybody the joys of beekeeping and share with the public a little bit about what beekeeping is and a little bit about honeybees. So, you know, spread the word, and we really appreciate everybody joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to Tim now.
Hey guys, I'm Tim Ferris. I run the Innovation Committee, which is hosting the event for us today. I'm also a master beekeeper, and I run one of the biggest apiary operations in this part of the state. So with me we also have our budding Alicia, that's a new beekeeper for this year. You got anything to say, Alicia?
My first year, I'm in it for the long haul, hopefully.
Yeah, excellent. So if we can zoom in on the eyes, you'll see Alicia experience new things for the first time through the season, and we'll try and explain it to the general public as well as to her level of beekeeping. And throughout the day we'll also throw in some high-tech stuff. So later in the show we also have a CAT scan of a bee. On the apiary yard we're at the moment, there's a swarm that's in process, so we can talk about swarming. But let's put some gear on and go check out the hive.
Awesome. And we're gonna have a panel discussion at the end. So if you guys have any questions for us, if you want to ask anything about bees or beekeeping or about Chester County, just type it into the YouTube channel, and we'll be answering them at the end.
Awesome.
Hey Tim, I see you brought your smoker back today.
Yeah, so I modified it slightly this morning. The actual clip's turned up that holds on the lid. So 2 weeks ago when we lit it, the lid came off. When I'm beekeeping, I actually wear the leather gloves, which is nice for when you're dealing with fire and hot metal. So it actually works quite well now, George.
It almost feels like it should have a name. Does it have a name yet?
No, I was going to compete against Ed's vaporizer that he's built. So I was going to call it like the Jimmy John 10,000 or something like that.
10,000.
Yeah.
Well, maybe someone watching today can give us a name for your smoker too.
Yeah, so it's got the battery capacity in the fan to run for about 5 hours, but the chamber-wise, it could probably go for 10.
Awesome.
Very nice
I
for
think
cutouts.
it definitely needs a name. So send in your names. If anybody out there has something creative, we'd love to hear it.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to redeem myself today. I got my little smoker. So my smoker lasted all of about 10 seconds last week. So I'm gonna try again as you guys get going there.
Awesome. Okay, Alicia, if you grab your hive tool, we'll open up the hive and see what we've got for today. So we're just taking off the outer cover that basically protects it from the elements. Underneath here we have an inner cover, so that gives us a thermal regulation. Okay, hive tool, working the edge. When you lift the lid off, just lift it away from you. That way if any bees fly out, nothing's going to fly on your face. We do have a honey super on, giving the bees a bit more space. If you look at the frames, they're brand new and waxed. The bees haven't really drawn anything out yet because we've had a pretty cold, wet weather week.
What's your favorite color to paint a hive, Tim?
I actually run different colors. The bees navigate by colour for orientation with their hives, so I actually paint all my bottom boards at one apiary yard different colours. Standard brew boxes I actually keep white, that way I can rotate them between hives and I don't have to worry about disorientation. So guys, if you can see that on the overhead, we actually have a brood binder unit, so this does temperature and humidity inside the hive. So at any time you can log on to the Chester County Beekeeping Association website and you can actually track these hives. Nice little gadget. It it helps you basically with the cluster of bees inside the hive and what's happening. It's a technical level of beekeeping that I don't use on a commercial aspect, but it's something you can do as a hobbyist level. Hey Alicia, what do you see inside the hive?
Bees and wax. Is that what that is?
Yeah, so you got some burr wax on top there, in between. When wax is brand new and fresh, it's white and it stains over time. So what I'm looking at is a major cluster over this side. We've got beads of bees coming up looking at us. If we wanted to, we could do a light puff, push the bees around the other way. I use this style of hive tool. When you buy them in bulk, they're about $3 each. It's directly out of China. But they're basically, the tapered end is quite smooth and easy for leverage. So if you want to, do you want to work the hive? And I can talk you through it.
Okay.
So I'll just pull out the first frame. So when I pull out the frame, I'm always looking for a queen, I'm looking for eggs, I'm looking at the brood pattern. So this one here, for example, has a little bit of carbohydrate on it. As we work towards the center of the cluster, we should be able to find the queen. The reason why we have the second brood box on is last time we were around, the queen was on the outside of the cluster looking for space to lay. Okay, grab your hive tool, Hunt, and we'll get going. Let's bring this up. So this will keep our bees protected and not fly away.
So why did you start beekeeping, Alicia?
Well, I guess a lot of things with COVID and you know, life kind of changing. It grounded me, and I felt like with the garden and all that kind of stuff, I kind of owed it to the bees, you know, to give them at least a place to stay.
Nice.
But my 2022 goal is to live entirely off the land, so we'll see how that goes.
How much land you got?
Just a little over 1/4 of an acre, so not a ton, but
Not a ton?
enough to get a garden and some chickens and some beehives.
So I run a couple of 100 acres and I'm still struggling to live off the land at the moment. But I have more honey than I can shake a stick at, which is nice. Okay, Hunt, so if you hold it by the ears of the frame, there you go, you can rotate it round and you can get the right angle. So guys, when you're looking at your frames, the bees actually build the wax out. There's about a 4-degree angle difference in the comb. So if you hold it by the ears, like Alicia's doing right now, you can actually stand with the light behind you and you can look right down with the black frames and see the bottom of the cells. With that rotation, you can see eggs, you can see larvae, you can see the pupae, which is basically all the brood cycle.
So Ted, what are the bees doing this month?
This month,
Yeah, what are they up to?
usually this month they're building in size in the colony, and if there's warm weather, they'll start collecting a lot of nectar, which is your main honey source. So when we're looking at it, they're basically worrying about, today we're worrying about space inside the hive. So as you can see, if you zoom up close, you can actually see all the nectar. So that shiny stuff is basically the nectar from trees this time of year. We haven't quite got into field undergrowth. So they're basically pulling in food stores to get them through next winter. So by manipulating the hive, which is basically what beekeeping is, we can give the bees more space so the colony will get larger in size, and then as a result they'll have more bees to forage and collect nectar, which is, when they dry it down, becomes our honey. Keep going. So guys, we're just going to keep working the hive till we find the queen, and what we'll probably end up doing is a frame rotation. Give more space directly above the queen, which helps with swarming. If you give her space to lay, it reduces that risk factor. Swarming is a natural characteristic for the bees. It's a way of passing on their genetic line, but at the same time it's good beekeeping practices to maintain your colony, not lose swarms all over the place. It just helps with your neighbours, it helps with the environment. They say that only around 20% of swarms actually survive. Today's a little bit cooler, but we know in the area that there are swarms happening. Actually, in this apiary yard, we've got a hive on the far side that we'll zoom in later on to show you what it looks like.
So don't they say, Tim, like 80% of the hives swarm if they're unmanaged? Or is that too high?
No, well, there's 80% might be a little high. So I've got an apiary yard that I've had a phone call over that people want me to manage for them or collect the swarms, and they've had 60% of their hive swarm at that site already this year. So with that, the swarms can be anywhere from ground level up to about 25 feet in the air. I actually run ladders on my truck almost all through this next 6 weeks, which is pretty much swarm season. Alicia, what have you found so far?
Just looks like honey, maybe?
Yeah, a lot of nectar, right? So it's not quite honey until they've capped it. So we'll keep going.
I'm the foolish one without the veil.
Yeah,
you know.
but they're pretty quiet bees.
They're very quiet, calm bees.
Okay, let's take a box off.
They're so calm I can smell them.
You can smell the calmness, George.
I can smell the calmness. You want me to do that again or no? Yeah? Somebody wants me to do that again. Okay, so
How do
I'm
you know
going
the
to stick
queen's not in
my
there?
face up and
Oh, I don't, but there's no
They're in
eggs,
the
no
hive.
brood. Right? So usually what I do when I do it,
That's how calm these bees are. People are afraid of bees, honeybees, and you know, when bees are like this,
so this one you want to work from about this side.
you know, they're really calm. And most bees are actually. Most honeybees are calm. So you definitely don't want to be afraid of honeybees because, and some people say they can sense your fear too, just like animals can, like a dog can sense your fear. Like they say the honeybees can sense your fear. Like you give off a pheromone that causes the bees to be alarmed if you're jittery. So
That's it.
just wonderful smell of the local nectar coming into this hive.
You want to taste some, George? Show it what
I
it looks
want to taste some?
Yeah, scoop some out and put it on the hive tool. Nectar is actually almost like a fruity wine. It's not dried off or thick like honey is at the moment.
There you go.
And
It's nice and thin. You can see it
Yeah.
drip in there. It's going to drip. See that?
Almost transparent this time of year.
Mm. It's wonderful. It's
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful.
So the only problem is
It's almost like wine, right?
it is almost like wine. The problem is because it's got the high moisture content still, it will actually ferment.
Mm.
So as the bees work it, they're drying it off. They're adding enzymes from their honey crop, which is their first stomach. But it's really quite sweet and delicious if you can eat it that way.
And there's comb honey, right? So comb honey is honey that still has the comb in it, right?
Yeah, so comb honey is almost as natural as you possibly can. You can get manipulations of it. So Ross rounds, which is a precast unit, it's a round form that the bees build out. It has less processing to it, so it's the most natural form of doing it.
I didn't get breakfast this morning, so I'm like, this is quite the treat.
Do the bees mind that you're doing that?
Am I sticking my face in
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Well, eating their hard work.
This time of year, not so much.
They have plenty to share.
Yeah.
You know?
It's when you get more into the fall, Alicia, that they
Second.
start getting. Let me check it. You grab the next one. It's when you get into the fall that they start worrying about their reserves. That's yours.
And some people are really good at, you know, like wine tasting. The same thing with honey tasting. There's all different kinds of flavors and.
Yes, there's a different colour grades. So there's the jack scales for colour. Guys, so we're still working through the hive. What we've got different over here is we're now getting more into the brood pattern. So we've got the cap pupae. The bees are actually keeping it warm by keeping it covered. They can shiver on the frame even if they need to keep it warmer through the cooler months.
I think I found a new friend, you know. These are my friends, Tim. There's got to be someone out there freaking out right now. It's like, what in the world is he doing? No? Well,
You are a strange guy. George.
I have
Okay.
my moments, you know. But, you know, I think these bees know we take good care of them, you know. So, and I think Alicia here, I think the song really helped today too.
I think so. It's like a lullaby for bees.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we are overcast. It is cooler. So the bees aren't actually out foraging today. They're just sitting in the cool, keeping their brood warm, moving stores around the hive. So with that, we've actually got more bees in the hive than normally. Usually half the bees are out foraging. Again, almost
The bees
right
only live
through.
6 weeks, so you know they don't have a very long lifespan. All these worker bees on here live about 6 weeks. So,
This time of year, George, you got overwintering bees that will be there from November, December, right the way through to April.
True. But in the spring they only live 6 weeks. And here's a drone. There's one boy on here. I'm gonna snag him. Not that he really wanted to be snagged, but
Guys, as George is talking about drones, this is drone brood, so you can actually notice that in your hive. It's on a standard frame, it's raised so it looks like small bullets, and you can see it right around the edge. So usually you'll get up to 20% of your population will be male, which are the drones. Their whole role inside the hive is just for mating and passing on the genetic code of the hive.
he's my friend too.
George and his friends.
George and my friends.
What do you see there?
And
Ellie?
drones can't sting. So
Is this the same thing
have a
he had,
stinger,
the drone
so-
brood?
Yeah, so
Any of these bees are that interested in stinging me today, but he can't. So he's just wandering around.
No.
Just came out. He's a young drone, a young boy.
So what you have here, Alicia, hold it up to the camera that way. What you have here on this side is worker drone, so it's reasonably flat. We've got spacing holes right the way through, so we've got a slight brood problem with the hive, so we could fix that by replacing the queen. If you rotate over, nice and easy, there you go. You've got drone brood all the way down this side with worker brood at the top, so a bit of a patchy pattern. George was questioning whether or not we wanted to replace her.
These are my friends now. We can't replace her.
Yeah, but we could potentially run a double screen and run 2 colonies in the same hive. So
Still kind of patchy.
yeah, still kind of patchy. So how a double screen works is they recognise the queen in the hive by queen pheromone, and that's done by touch. So trail fax, which is like mouth-to-mouth contact. If you run a divider board that's 3/8 thick with screen on either side, you can actually get heat transfer up from the lower hive, which allows you to run a queen down below and a queen above. And it's a good way of introducing a new queen and build up that hive at the same time. You love those drones.
This drone really is a sweet guy. Did you find the queen yet?
No,
No.
they're getting a bit more aggressive.
They're starting to hum a little bit. I think I'm going to back up.
Yeah. So guys, we haven't found the queen, but we'll just rebuild the hive a little bit. And then we'll actually schedule this one for a queen replacement for next time, which we can show you how to do at the next show.
I think that queen knows that we're out looking for her.
Yeah, so sometimes you can actually pull the frame of brood out of the hive, and the bees pick up that the queen is absent almost instantaneously. So with that, you'll get a different hum inside the hive, so you can notice there's more noise. So we've definitely disturbed a frame with the queen on it. Did you have this one marked, George?
Yeah, she's marked. And I don't think they swarm. It's not big enough.
It's unlikely for her to be on the outside frames.
She's usually in the center of the cluster, and what she'll do is a lane pattern through and build. So even though we're in a square box, the brood pattern is usually in a sphere shape, which is basically optimum for a lane pattern and for warmth protection.
There was a question about what about the screen? You're saying about a screen?
Yeah, so guys, a double screen is a advanced hive keeping method. It's basically a suspension of gap. So what happens is with the bees, they transfer a lot of the pheromones by touch. So by having a voided space where they can't transfer that touch, the top section of the hive, which would be above a double screen, would then become queenless in a sense. So they'll actually start using a female larvae and feed it more royal jelly at a very young age, so anything under 36 hours, and they will regenerate a new queen in the top box. So by using a double screen rather than grafting, you can bring in a frame of eggs that you want that will hatch into the right size larvae, for them to make a new queen. And then the bees were already traveling that distance in that location. So when you're ready, you can crush the queen that you want to replace, and you just take out the double screen and lower it down, and all those bees, their pheromones and their smell of the hive will blend into one. The major benefit is also the heat from the lower colony will transfer through that double screen and keep a smaller colony warm above through that cycle.
Got another question.
Yeah.
What is the latest our CCBA region is making splits that will survive through the winter?
So that fluctuates each year. I usually try and have a laying queen by the beginning of July for my splits. So if you reverse calculate that, you want to really be doing it no later than the second week of June, allowing 22-day cycle for a laying queen. With the cooler weather we've been having, we haven't had the large build-up of drones. So ideally in the next, this current month from the second week of May to the second week of June is our main season now for making splits. It also correlates to our swarm season at the same time. So that's basically when all the resources are balanced in the area, and you're going to get the best genetic coding from the amount of drones that are flying around in the natural environment. But you can always manipulate hives. So even if you're doing late splits, you can always add more brood and getting those bee numbers up.
I'm feeding my drone.
Feeding your drone.
Feeding my drone. What's that thing called that they stick out to suck up the nectar?
The proboscis.
Proboscis. He's got his proboscis out. Oof.
Yeah, so that's a modified tongue almost. It's like a snout that forms. So it's two sections that roll together. Chris, any more questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, Alicia. I did not see the queen even when I double checked you. I'm sure she's in here.
Maybe she's on the edge.
Yeah, maybe she's in that top box that I pulled off earlier and we didn't check.
proboscis.
Well, we didn't check these either. You don't think it's likely?
No, usually
That
should
thing
be
that's
with the
coming
brood,
out of its
but I don't see
right between its
I
eyes.
see a few eggs on this frame here. But we'll just put it back together. We don't want to get the brood too cold.
Anyway, interesting, isn't it?
Okay, let me grab that top box.
Very interesting.
So guys, what you got to worry about when you're working with hives is chilled brood, especially in cooler weather patterns. So when I say chilled, anything under 60 degrees, there's always a chance of chilling it off. So if you have a little box beside you, a nuke box or a screen box, you can put your brood in there and get rid of the wind chill. There's the queen, the frame I never checked.
Ah,
Top
there
box.
she is.
Yeah, right there. Guys, can you see the queen? So Alicia called me on it. She said it would be out on the edge. It was in the top box, one of the frames I didn't check. Usually I rotate my frames and have my feed stores on the outside. If we look at that frame, if we look in closely at the right angle, you'll actually see eggs in the bottom. Her pattern is a bit off. When I say that, she's not laying in every cell. So unfortunately we'll eventually squeeze this queen and replace her with new stock. Another thing on this frame that you can see is all the pollen around the outside. So the pollen is the protein source that they use for feeding young larvae. They actually turn that into royal jelly. Royal jelly is made in the hypophalangeal gland, which is a sinus gland of the bee, pretty much in the forehead.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Do you want split drone in abundance or more of a balance?
So I actually really like drones. To me, that shows a healthy colony. A good amount of them is fantastic. When I say a good amount, I'm looking at like 20% of the population of the hive. So, and using plastic frames, I'll actually introduce a green frame, which is a drone foundation. So the cell is larger. The queen knows not to fertilize that egg as she's laying because the cell wall is larger. In saying that, if I've got a weak colony, usually their population doesn't build up to produce drones anyway. So they're an indicator for the strength and size of your hive. They're also useful from a natural mite level indicator. You can also replace those green drone frames and freeze them out in cycling as well as a natural miticide. So as we're talking about that, the founderess mite, they will lay in a drone cell. They prefer a drone cell because they can reproduce more often. So they lay a male first, and then they do a couple of females after that through their cycles.
It is a shame to kill this queen. These are real nice bees.
So what we can do, even though the queen's got a problem, George, is we could actually capture some of the drones if you wanted to and put more drone frames in there. The club's actually now got a artificial instrumental insemination program going. So on, I think it's this coming Saturday, we're looking at squeezing drones and getting their semen out of them and impregnating 10 queens that we have.
That's some pretty scientific stuff. But yes, you know, we could contribute some of these drones to that effort, because they're nice calm bees.
Yeah. So as we rebuild the hive, we're doing a frame manipulation. So what we're doing is putting anything with stores to the outside edge, anything with free open cells, we're gonna put in the center of the hive. That way, the queen will find that, and she'll start laying back in our center of our sphere. Hey, Alicia, do you want to grab those ones out of the box on the other side there? But these bees are, you're right, George, these bees are very, very calm.
You want to put the brood motor back there.
Oh yeah, sorry mate.
Yeah, you basically they're all in there, and you basically went through every single frame, and I still, there's a little bit of a hum, but not much for sure. That bumping of the boxes didn't help.
That's right, I'm bulletproof, I'm in full gear, mate.
You know, it's just like,
So you guys, you'll notice
I forget what you did on the last time we did one of these.
I was splitting brood apart, drone brood, to see the larvae to check for mites on them, and it.
You dropped the frame?
No, I didn't drop it. I just ripped it and it popped, and bees went everywhere. So George underdresses. I dress quite heavily. The reason why I do is because I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll wear a suit like this all day long and go through quite a few hives.
My friend left me. I think I got close enough to Alicia. And he said, I'm out of here.
Alicia's probably wearing a nice perfume today. You wearing anything
Maybe.
special, Alicia?
I think it was the
Anything
song.
special?
I don't think it had
Yeah.
anything. I think it was the song. And
Just the song.
he took off.
Yeah. So guys, as we joke about fruity perfumes, you don't really want to wear a cologne or any herbal extract for a shampoo when you're working with the bees. You end up with a lot of bees around your face. They work with olfactory sensors, so smell is a very big thing for them.
I hear you were saying, Tim, we're gonna show a CAT scan today?
Yeah. So
Tell us a little bit.
lucky enough in the community, we've been able to work with quite a few dentists in development of some Hive products. One of them, Dr. Shea, has just opened up a new dental surgery where she does basically just root canals 24/7, right? So that's what she specializes in. And with that, she's got in Exton, she's got a brand new office that has a CAT scan machine. She uses state-of-the-art microscopes. So we'll ask Chris to play that for you and give you an idea of some of the technology that's out there, and see what you can see with CAT scan.
Awesome.
All right, there's another question.
You want to save that for Q&A, or you want to take it now, Tim?
What is the question?
Some of the books I've read said you put the queen's wings for the tagger to make it easier to find her in the hive or in the swarm. Either of that.
No, personally I don't. But there's reasons behind it. One, that takes a lot of time, so time is important to me. But there are benefits to it. So this queen here was actually, when you say tagged, was marked with a paint dot on the back of her thorax. So it makes them easier to stand out. There's some colours that are in a scale, and with that you can tell the age of the queen if you follow that process. So this year is actually white, which is not the easiest colour to see in the hive. But if you clip when they say clipping wings, so on the queen with the bees you've got your wings. If you clip one side, what that does is stop that queen flying off in a swarm. It buys you a little time. So as that queen can't fly off, when the next queen comes through, the virgin queen comes through, that hive will actually swarm with the virgin queen. So what it does is buy you a 6-day window. but you still have to manage that swarm and do it and manage swarm technique. So one of that is finding the old queen in that process if the virgin's still there, making a nuke box or creating a split and doing that routine. So otherwise half the population will just fly off with the virgin queens. So there are pros to it. Cons, it's a different management style that just takes a bit of time. If you're running 3 or 4 hives, why not? It keeps it simple.
You want to introduce the video again? Or?
Yeah, so what we've got is onyx, which is in external. Here we actually have a queen. It's actually laying an egg right now. So what it looks like, even though it's under magnification, think of a white grain of rice, but it's only the sixth the size. So as their abdomen goes into the cell to lay, that egg will stand up on end. Over the next 2.5 days, it will go through a spectrum of lying down to horizontal, and then the 3rd day it hatches into a very small C-shaped larvae. So that's very impressive to actually get that recorded. That's amazing. Abe Lincoln's bigger than the larvae.
Alright, I am going to show you my other machine, fancy machine. It's called a cone beam CT, and it's shortened out to a CBCT. What it does is it takes x-rays, like how when you go to your dentist, you get an x-ray taken of your tooth, except the x-ray that you get regularly taken, it's a 2-dimensional image, so meaning it's flat. This machine takes a 3-dimensional image, and it's Alright, here we are. We're going to take a picture, a 3-dimensional CT picture of this bee. We're going to start the machine. Alrighty, so what I'm going to show you is the 3D image we took of the bee. It takes a few minutes to process because there's a lot of data that gets transferred from the CBCT machine to the computer, and the data has to get compiled together so that we can actually see a picture of this bee in 3 dimension. And so here we are with the bee mounted, and I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to have Tim tell you some features that he can see on this.
So that is a really clean image. It's amazing to see the scope of what your machinery can do in your office here. So with that bee, you can definitely see the head. You can even see the compound eyes forming at the front. You've got the thorax, you've got legs coming off, and you've got the abdomen. It's almost like looking at a lobster in a lobster tank at the supermarket. It's really quite impressive. So if anybody has a root canal to do, this is a good spot.
Yeah.
Is he out of range? Yeah. Just come closer. I think you might be out of range, mate. Just point from a distance. Guys, George has just experienced some technical difficulties. I don't think our range for our audio is that great. So what he was trying to show you was a swarm in process. So later through the summer, there's a concept they call bedding, and what that is, heat dispersal. So as the hive gets warmer, they want to keep that brood at constant temperature. Right now we're sitting at about 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which like inside the hive they want to keep that around 90, 96. So what they're doing is they're building up on the outside of the hive. They're forming a tighter cluster. Once the sun comes out fully, they'll find a spot to go. It's usually around 10 to 15 feet away from the initial hive usually. It'll be anywhere up to 20 feet up in the tree. So with that, they're just, all the bees inside the hive that are going to fly, they're actually filling up both their stomachs, and they can actually withstand being outside a food source for about 3 days before they run out of energy. So
you could hear the activity by that hive too.
yeah, so the queens will be communicating, so there's a term called piping where they're talking to each other, so they're at a high frequency. So bees, you got to remember the bees inside the box, it's dark, so they're doing everything by vibration. So like a waggle dance is a way they communicate distance and food and sources. And with that, they vibrate around 265 hertz, which is basically a movement of their body 265 times in a second. So when we talk about swarm management, that's one aspect. Then you got to have gear to get your swarm out of a tree potentially. And then if it really comes bad, you got to get swarms out of buildings. So some of the standard gear I have, like I've got 2 jobs to go to this afternoon to get swarms out, is I have a battery packed power source, so I can cut through gyprock and scoop out bees out of wall cavities. And then when things get really bad and I get called out to hornets' nests where people mistake them as bees, or they just do a free phone call and say, hey Tim, can you help me out? I'll climb up a ladder with a machete, scoop out the hornet's nest, let that drop down into a trash can, seal it off, and put a cup of petrol or gasoline in there to fumigate them off.
But I think the important thing for people to realize is that swarms are not dangerous. They're not going to sting you. They're not going to attack you. They're just looking for a new home. And if you see a swarm out there, you can go to the website, and there's a list on chescobees.org, and there's a list of beekeepers that'll come and help you get the swarm out of your trees or out of your house. So, you know, the club wants to help people who have swarms because those bees just need a new home. So.
Yeah, so in that swarm state, you've got 2 states. So you've got the tight cluster where they're formed and they're sitting on a branch, and then you've got the moving cloud where they're all flying in unison to a new direction. Sometimes what can happen is when that swarm has found a new home, and I'm not talking about the branch just beside the original hive, but anywhere up to like a 1.5–2 mile radius, while they're flying away, there's still other scout bees that are looking for different sites, and they might return back to that branch when the swarm has left. So there can be lingering bees around places. So the bees might also, if it's bad weather, they might find a cavity or a building that's not perfect, but it'll do for a short-term period. So down in media last week, I went to 4 or 5 locations because we had a wet spell that came through, and the bees were looking for cavities at floor level, which is usually not ideal for a natural colony. They're usually looking for something 10–15 up. But that swarm would have been there for about 4 or 5 hours, usually on a sunny side, warm face, and then as they're finding another cavity, the lingering bees from scout bees, they'll be left behind. And when I say that, there might be 15 to 20 bees, which is unfortunately a normal part of their cycle.
And swarms need beekeepers, because if the swarm decides it's going to take up residence in a tree or in a house, the chance of that swarm surviving the winter is only about 15 to 20%. While if a beekeeper gets it and takes good care of it, puts it in a hive and manages it, that swarm is going to be probably an 80 to 90% chance of surviving. So 4 times more likely to survive if a beekeeper gets that swarm than if the swarm finds a tree.
Yeah, swarms are actually, when you're as a beekeeper catching them, they're actually a really nice thing to catch. So they quite rapidly build up a lot of wax. So if you're looking for comb honey production, actually catching a swarm is really ideal, because they'll build out a cavity very, very quickly. They're full of energy, ready to go. So they're bringing a lot of stores with them. And usually they're non-aggressive. They're actually they're more the passive side of the hive that actually swarms, because they're getting pushed out of the hive basically. So swarms are nothing to fear. It's a natural occurrence of the bees, but the beekeeper can manage and take care of them. So when you're looking at bee survival, they usually do pretty well too. Questions?
Get your swarm and bring it back to your hive.
You can do. So I actually helped out a few of the club members this week. So with that, we we catch the hive, we'll feed it, we'll introduce young larvae, young brood, which then tricks the hive into thinking that they've found a new location the queen's already laying. So by doing that, you can keep them in the same apiary yard. Usually what I like to do when I'm catching other people's swarms is to actually have designated apiary yards where I'll take all those swarms. That way I can monitor for disease control and not bringing any diseases back into my main operation. So like last week I caught seven swarms for my own operation, going out into the neighborhoods, and I caught 3 or 4 for club members and retrieved them back to their own apiary yards.
I set up a new beekeeper with a small swarm. It was really neat. It was out at the apiary. It was about, swarm sizes can vary from the size of a beach ball almost to the size of a volleyball. So this one was a small swarm. So this one went to a new beekeeper who was very excited to get it. So that made,
yeah, nothing wrong with small swarms.
yeah, absolutely.
They're actually really nice for a beginning beekeeper from the aspect that you can put them straight into a nuke box, and you can look. It's a lot easier to look through the bees and find them. So what I usually do is when I catch a swarm, I'll put them into a deep box. If I'm having to go up 30 feet in the air, I usually cut part of the branch off, which is a bit of a no-no, but it's a good way of keeping all those pheromones. And also, then I also know those bees aren't, the next swarm that goes in the area isn't going to go up to that same branch 30 feet up. So with that, they'll leave pheromones on the branch that can actually survive out through rain. And some yards, like I've got one client that allows me to catch all his swarms. He had 2 swarms in the same day in the same tree. So yeah. The poor old tree looks a bit different because I've caught 5 swarms out of there in the last 2 weeks. But it's by taking that branch, I can keep those pheromones there. They know that to stay in the box. So I'll put 10 frames in the deep box, and then I'll have a shallow box, which is I only use for swarm control. And I'll put the branch section there. If I get 2 swarms at the same time in 2 different clusters, I'll use that double screen again, which then allows me to keep the heat together and buys me some time to then go back through the hives and look for the queens.
Yeah, we're just waiting for a good, nice day this week because it's been 4 or 5 days of no flight conditions. So the first nice day, we're going to have swarms hanging from every tree in Chester County.
Yeah, so from the weather forecast, Wednesday, Thursday is going to be big swarming activity.
Yeah, so if you're looking for free bees Wednesday or Thursday, sometime between 2 and 4 o'clock, go out and look at some trees. I hear we have another, oh, don't sting me, I've done all day without getting stung.
It's a series of questions all around swarming, but what do you do if you want to keep just 2 hives and the bees are getting too crowded? Is the swarm be taken somewhere else? Can the population be thinned out before they are thinking about swarming?
So the question, Tim, who has 500 hives, how do you...
No, not quite 500, but I'm getting there.
How do you keep from having, how do you keep only 2 hives and not expand?
So there is the Demarest method where you can take frames of egg and larvae up.
Get a swarm.
Eggs and larvae up, and you can then take off the queen cells as they make more queen cells. So that's one method. That's very labor intensive from a commercial perspective. What I like to do is actually make a whole lot of nukes. So I will run 50 to 60 nukes through the spring into the summer, and then if I'm treating with formic acid, which is the only miticide that we have for mites that can go through the wax capping, with that, if I have a mortality rate, so if one of the queens die off through that process, I can add a nuke back into it. So that's a sustainable method of beekeeping.
Yeah, I agree, Tim. I think in order to keep 2 hives, you should always have 1 or 2 nukes that you're working. So, you know, to take advantage of this bee's natural tendency to want to swarm, make a split, keep that split in a nuke, keep it small, and if it survives the winter, you could give it away, or you could sell it, or you could do several things with it. So I think making a split is the way, and making a nuke is a good way to deal with that.
Yeah, so as Alicia and I were going through that other hive, one of the things we talked about was frame rotation and giving space for the queen to lay. So by giving room above the queen, usable room, so drawn out frames that the queen can potentially lay in, that'll help you with the swarming too. So the colony will just actually grow in size rather than being restricted by the volume space. So basic beekeeping 101 is volume of bees to the volume of space. So when you manipulate, you're thinking all the time, what can I do best for the hives? This time of year, it's actually creating usable space. So even though it's cooler, we've been putting on honey supers. I think last week we put out 300 honey supers just to give the bees more space.
Donna. Sorry.
So Tim, maybe you could tell us a little bit about where we could get a nuke, where we should look to order it, what type. I'm a new beekeeper and I looked online and I'm overwhelmed by the process.
Yeah, so the actual, the Chester County Beekeeping Association has a forum with for sale, and then so local nukes will be available. And then if you want to go to a more commercial operator, the Exton Bee Company is one. What's Ernest's company?
Blevins Bees.
Yeah, Blevins Bees. So you've got guys in the area that run sort of 50 to 100 hives that commercially they'll part of their swarm management is to create nukes and then on sell them to the community. And then if you reach out to a local guy that way rather than trying to buy something that's shipped in, you usually get a lot of support and help, and basically Q&A with them directly. But with the club platform, you can also ask questions through that, and usually members respond to it pretty quickly. So even though it sounds daunting buying a nuke or buying a package earlier on in the season, there is a community-based hub with the website forum that asks questions, and then with that, there's a lot of information out on YouTube, but it's very site-specific on the environment that you're in. So if you're watching something from California, it might not necessarily apply to what we have weather-wise here. You'll find that even 5-6 miles away is a different environment with what's coming in at the moment.
Most beekeepers, I find like new beekeepers are sometimes intimidated by the process, and are sort of reluctant to sort of say, I don't know, or how do I do this? And I really encourage people to sort of just find their local beekeeper and ask, start up a conversation, say, hey, I'm thinking about getting bees, or I want to learn some more. And most of the club members are great and willing to help you out, and don't be afraid to not know what you're doing, honestly.
That was definitely my experience. Being my first year, it was and I'm a big DIYer, so I had it stuck in my head that I had to do this myself, and joining the Chester County Beekeepers Association was probably one of the best things that I did, even though I did it reluctantly because I wanted to do it all by myself. But in doing that, I met a bunch of great people, and I don't think I could have probably done it myself, but I probably wouldn't have done it as well. So it's definitely something to look into, even if it seems like silly or out of range or something like that. It's definitely a good tool, resource to have.
Fantastic.
Yeah, beekeeping's a skill, and I'm a huge believer the best way to learn a skill is to find somebody who can teach you the skill. It's one thing to learn on your own, but if you learn bad habits early on or bad beekeeping practices, your bees aren't going to survive, or less likely to survive.
So, in saying that, there's always safety in numbers. So when someone says they want to get one beehive, that's a hard sell, because if something goes wrong, it can go catastrophic. If you've got 2 hives, then you can manipulate brood, you can take eggs or larvae from one hive if you've lost the queen or it swarms. It gives you more tools in the toolbox to play around with.
Yeah, and I think when you're out there trying to find somebody to help you, the first question you should ask them is how many of your bees survive, and what percentage of your bees survive. And if they're saying half their bees don't make it through the winter, that's somebody who probably needs to learn a few more skills. If they tell you that all their bees survive or 90% of their bees survive, that's somebody who knows what they're doing for sure. And not to brag about the Chester County bees, but for the last 2 years, we've had 0 loss through the winter. So last year, 2 years ago, we had 8 out of 8 hives survive, and this year we had 16 out of 16 hives survive the winter. So the Chester County Bee Club does a good job taking care of their bees for sure.
So guys, to put that in context, Delaware State, which is just over the border from where we're sitting at the moment, on average they lost around 50 to 60% of their bees this past season. So not saying they're bad beekeepers, but we had a very long winter, so their management technique did not actually match the season that we had.
Yeah, people want to know that bees are in trouble, but bees can live with a skilled beekeeper for sure. So they struggle a little bit without skilled beekeepers, but with a skilled beekeeper, you can get bees to survive for sure.
Donna.
So one more question, since we're talking about swarming and getting new boxes and things, I heard you talk about painting just the bottom box a certain color?
Not the bottom box, actually just the bottom board.
The bottom board.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't get mine waxed yet. We didn't have a date for that, and I bought some boxes, and I thought it'd be really pretty to paint all the boxes different colors. Do you advise against that?
No, I don't. So when you're running a few amount of hives, having different colors on all your boxes is fantastic. So all my honey supers will actually be different colors. So I will, if I'm doing comb honey, that box is a different size. I have that a specific color, and I'll put that in different orders, and then with different frame setups, they're in different colors, and then I'll stack them differently so they look like an offset traffic light pattern. The reason why I paint the bottom boards a different color is because the bees orientate to color, right? So they don't see into the red spectrum, into ultra infrared, but they see into the ultraviolet. So with that, I'll have colors like yellow, blue, orange, green, and white, right? Because they can see white in the white light. So with that, it stops the bees from not recognizing their entrance. So there's a term called drifting, where a loaded honeybee coming in with stores will accidentally return to the wrong hive, or if there's a standard wind that's blowing the bees one way, you'll see that on a standard apiary, one hive will become a lot stronger than the rest. When we talk about guard bees defending the hive, if another bee is returning, they can smell what's on that bee. The bee actually changes shape, so that they'll recognize that bee's bringing in stores and not robbing them. So they'll welcome them in with open arms, and then that bee will then be simulated into that colony. So by painting the bottom boards or the landing boards, depending on your setup, that can help you with drift. Also, rotating your hives different directions will help with drift. But all my apiary yards are usually 5 hives in one apiary yard, and then I'll go down 2.5 miles down the road and have another one. With that color scheme, I can also do simple hive management by saying orange hive needs such and such. Then I'll have my brood boxes will all be white, because then I can transfer them and then there's no color distraction. And then my honey supers are all different colors. I also stagger my honey supers back to give an entrance at the top, so eventually those bees that are out foraging, they'll orientate to those honey supers. Chris?
All right, do you need special paints to use? I was gifted a hive and wanted to sand it down, repaint it, spruce it up before I get my first bees.
I just use exterior paint. Alicia's a painter. What do you use?
I wax dipped mine, but it's probably important to say that if they're wax dipped or if there's any kind of oil base on there, you definitely don't want to paint with a latex, because that won't stick. So personally, I would use a top tier paint from like Sherwin-Williams, maybe something along the lines of like the Emerald Exterior. It's got like no to low VOCs depending on which colors you're putting in there. So that's what I would use personally on my hive.
Follow up to that is how long should you paint before you get your bees?
Can't be the day before, mate. It all depends. So I'm continuously making gear this time of year. We're painting the day before, so you're not really worried about the fumes. You're only painting the exterior of the box. You don't paint the interior of the box.
From a paint standpoint, it takes a couple weeks to even a couple months for paint to cure. So the earlier the better. But as far as dry time, if you're doing it in nice weather, it would dry, almost the same day. But fume wise, I probably wouldn't do it the day before.
Yeah.
It's great to have a paint expert.
Yeah. I never thought this would come in handy at this specific moment. Yeah, this is it for me.
You are shining today.
Yeah.
So being a paint expert, I actually heard in your statement that you waxed it. Was there a reason why you waxed it being over painting?
I paint all day long, so it was just the thought that if I could do less painting, that would be great. Also from just a natural standpoint, I just thought the wax, the benefit being that I heard that it would hold up to, years, to like 20 to 30 years. I don't know, how accurate that is, or if you need to then, re-dip them every once in a while. But as far as paint is concerned, I just wanted to leave it as natural as possible. Anytime you're applying something like, a paint, there is, something in it that might, not be the best to ingest or to have around. But I'm not saying that that's that painting is a bad thing by any means. It was just, for me personally, it seemed like a lot less maintenance, number one.
Job for you, right?
Yeah, a lot less maintenance, a lot less job, and then
Do that full time.
Yeah, you already do that full time, and then and like I said, the sustainability of it lasting longer.
And we have donuts and drinks when we waxed it. So.
Yes, that was really. I went there just for the donut. Recently became a vegan, so
You want to do your jingle again? Yeah, you've become a vegan.
yeah, I've become a vegan. So
How does that work with honey? I thought you're not allowed to take any animal products.
my aim, like I said, is that by 2022 I am going to be self-sustaining, and I can only eat what I've hunted, grown, or harvested myself.
Well,
Have you
people.
ever had possum on a stick?
I have not had possum on a stick.
Well,
Am I missing out?
Yeah, I've had alligator, emu, crocodile. I try something different all the time. Frog's legs, that's a delicacy in this area.
Well,
That's not vegan.
I know, but we're
I
talking
look
roadkill
forward
there for a minute.
to seeing how Alicia does with this. It's going to be very cool to.
I should probably.
Over time
I should
and
probably
share
do
it
a
with us.
blog. Yeah, something that we can look back on.
Yeah.
Make a little scrapbook.
Yeah, so talking blogs, eventually we're going to set up a blog for Alive at the Hive, and well, that can help with community outreach with questions.
That's what happened to Alicia.
Alicia.
Her eyes are sparkly, they're gorgeous. I can say that as a married man, I'm good. I'm very secure with myself.
With that, let's wrap up the show.
All right.
Jingle,
Doing the
mate?
jingle.
Yeah.
What's the buzz, busy bee? You make life sweeter for you and me. I'll plant the flowers, you bring the queen. We'll build a great big colony. Spring is sprung, let's fly sky high. We're alive at the hive.